room was too quiet for a man who believed he was in control. Jordan Whitmore leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against a stack of documents, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. He spoke as if everything money, marriage, even what Iris loved most, had already been settled. He had sold her dog, for cash, like it meant nothing. Across from him, Iris Whitmore didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She only looked at him and smiled. Because somewhere between his lies and his confidence, Jordan had already left a trail he couldn't erase, and she had been following it long before he realized. If you believe silence is weakness, this story may change your mind. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and your local time, and if stories about quiet strength and real justice resonate with you. Consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Most people who knew Iris Whitmore would have described her life as quiet, stable, and unremarkable in the best possible way. She lived in a modest two-story home in a suburb just outside Seattle, where the mornings came in soft gray light and the evenings settled early with a kind of gentle stillness. The neighborhood was lined with identical mailboxes, trimmed hedges, and the kind of routine that made everything feel predictable. It was the kind of place where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. And for a long time, nothing did. Iris worked as a financial analyst for a mid-sized firm, the kind of job that required precision more than personality. She was known for her accuracy, her ability to notice small inconsistencies in large data sets, and her quiet reliability. She did not talk much in meetings. She did not interrupt. But when she spoke, people listened, because what she said was always grounded, always measured, and always correct. She carried that same discipline into her personal life. Her home was orderly without being sterile. Her routines were steady without being rigid. She did not fill silence with noise, and she did not fill space with unnecessary things. What she valued, she kept close. What she did not trust, she observed from a distance. That was how she had always lived. Jordan Whitmore had once fit neatly into that world. When they first met, he had been attentive in a way that felt effortless. He remembered details. He showed up on time. He asked questions and seemed to listen to the answers. He had a steady job in operations management and a confidence that felt grounded rather than performative. To people on the outside, he was the kind of man who made sense beside someone like Iris. Together, they looked balanced. He spoke more. She listened more. He moved quickly. She considered carefully. He filled rooms. She read them. For several years, that balance held. There were no loud fights, no dramatic scenes, no visible fractures that would have warned anyone watching that something inside the marriage had begun to shift. But quiet changes do not announce themselves. They accumulate. It began in ways that were easy to explain away. Jordan started coming home later than usual. At first it was work, deadlines, staffing issues, a new project that required extra hours. The explanations were reasonable, and they came easily. Iris did not question him immediately. She had never been someone who reacted without observing first. She adjusted her schedule, ate dinner alone when necessary, and left a portion for him in the refrigerator. But she noticed. The timing was inconsistent. The tone in his voice when he explained was just slightly off, as if he were repeating something he had already rehearsed. His attention drifted more often. His phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, now stayed within reach at all times. Small things. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they began to form a pattern. There was also the spending. At first, it was subtle. A slightly higher credit card balance. A few transactions at places Iris did not recognize. Restaurants they had never visited together. Charges that did not align with his usual habits. Again, nothing that could not be explained. Until it happened again, and again. Iris did not confront him. Not yet. She did what she always did. She kept track. And then there was Max. Max had come into Iris's life years before Jordan. A golden retriever with a calm temperament and an unusual attentiveness that made him feel less like a pet and more like a quiet companion. She had adopted him during a period in her life when everything else had felt uncertain, when stability had not yet taken shape. Max had been constant. He learned her routines quickly, waited by the door when she returned home, rested his head against her knee when she sat in silence, followed her from room to room, not out of need, but out of a kind of quiet loyalty. Jordan had never fully understood that bond. He tolerated Max, fed him when necessary, walked him occasionally. But there was a distance in the way he interacted, as if he saw the dog as an accessory to Iris's life rather than a part of it. Iris noticed that too, not as a problem at first, just as another detail. Over time, however, even that distance changed. Jordan became less patient, less willing to engage. He would step around Max rather than acknowledge him, complain about fur on the couch, about the time required for walks, about the cost of vet visits. These were not loud complaints. They were small, dismissive comments dropped into otherwise normal conversations. But they added up. One evening, as the gray light outside began to fade into early dusk, Iris stood at the kitchen sink rinsing a glass while Max rested nearby. Jordan entered, dropped his keys onto the counter, and sighed in a way that felt heavier than the day should have required. "Long day?" Iris asked, without turning. "Something like that," he replied. There was a pause. Max lifted his head, watching Jordan for a moment before settling back down. Jordan glanced at the dog, then away. "We should probably start thinking about simplifying things around here," he said. Iris turned slightly, drying her hands with a towel. "Simplifying, yeah. Less responsibility, less extra cost." His tone was casual, but not entirely. Iris did not respond immediately. She studied his face the way his eyes avoided holding hers for more than a second. "What kind of responsibility?" she asked. Jordan shrugged. "Just in general. We don't need everything we have." It was vague, intentionally so. Iris nodded once as if accepting the answer, but she did not press further. Not because she agreed, because she understood that pushing too soon often meant missing something later. Jordan seemed satisfied with that. He moved on, opening the refrigerator, scanning its contents as if the conversation had not carried any weight. But it had. Iris felt it settle somewhere deeper than the surface of the moment. That night, after Jordan had gone to bed, Iris remained in the living room, sitting on the couch, with Max resting beside her. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made small sounds feel louder: the hum of the refrigerator, the distant passing of a car, the steady rhythm of Max's breathing. She reached down, running her hand slowly along his back. He shifted slightly, leaning into the contact. "I know," she murmured, though it was unclear whether she was speaking to him or to herself. Her mind moved through the details she'd been collecting: the late nights, the unexplained spending, the subtle changes in tone, the conversation that had just taken place. Individually, each piece could be dismissed. Together, they formed something else. Something incomplete, but no longer random. Iris did not jump to conclusions. That was not how she operated. She did not create narratives to fill gaps. She waited until the gaps began to close on their own. And they were closing, slowly. She stood, turned off the lights, and headed upstairs, Max following quietly behind her. In the bedroom, Jordan was already asleep, his phone placed face down on the nightstand closer to his side than usual. Iris paused for a moment at the doorway. Then she walked in, lay down, and closed her eyes. But she did not sleep immediately. Because somewhere beneath the calm surface of her life, something had shifted. Not enough to break anything, not yet, but enough to change the direction of everything that would come next. The absence was immediate. Iris knew it the moment she opened the front door. There are certain presences in a home that do not need to be seen to be felt. Max had always been one of them. The soft thud of his tail against the wall, the quiet shift of weight on the floorboards, the way he would appear within seconds, not rushing, just certain. That afternoon there was nothing. No movement, no sound, no waiting shape in the hallway. Iris stood still for a moment, her hand still resting lightly on the door handle as it closed behind her. Her eyes moved slowly across the living room, scanning without urgency, without panic. "Max," she called, her voice even. Silence answered. She set her bag down in its usual place, removed her coat, and hung it neatly. Her movements remained measured, controlled. Only after everything was where it belonged did she begin to walk through the house. Living room, empty. Kitchen, no sign. Back door, closed. She checked the latch. Locked. Iris moved to the small console near the entryway and picked up the remote for the doorbell camera. The screen lit up, displaying the front porch. She rewound the footage to earlier that afternoon, watching carefully. Time passed on the screen in accelerated fragments. Delivery drivers, a passing neighbor, a car slowing briefly before moving on. No Max, no open door, no indication that he had left the house on his own. She set the remote down. Still no change in her expression. Only then did she reach for her phone and dial Jordan. He answered on the third ring. "Hey," he said, his tone neutral, almost too neutral. "Where's Max?" Iris asked. There was a brief pause. Not long enough to be obvious. Just long enough to be registered. "I don't know," Jordan replied. "What do you mean he's not here?" Another pause, slightly longer this time. "Maybe he got out," Jordan said. "Did you check the yard?" "The doors are locked." "Well, he's a dog, Iris. He could have found a way." The explanation came quickly. Too quickly. Iris walked toward the back door again, opening it this time and stepping out into the yard. The grass was undisturbed. The gate was still latched. She closed the door behind her. "The gate's closed," she said. Jordan exhaled softly. "Then I don't know what to tell you. He was there when I left." "When did you leave?" "Around 2. Iris glanced at the clock on the wall. It was now just past 5. "Did you let him out?" "No." "Did anyone come by?" "No." His answers were immediate, smooth, consistent, almost practiced. Iris leaned lightly against the counter, her fingers resting on its edge. "Okay," she said. That was all. No accusation, no raised voice, just a single word. Jordan seemed to hesitate, as if expecting something more. "Well, let me know if you find him," he added. "I will." She ended the call. The house felt larger now. Not emptier exactly, just altered. Iris moved through the remaining rooms one more time, slower this time, as if allowing herself to notice details she might have missed. Max's bed was still in its place, his food bowl half full, his leash hanging on its hook. Nothing disturbed, nothing out of place. Except him. She returned to the entryway and picked up the remote again, this time rewinding further back. She watched the footage from the moment Jordan would have still been home. There he was, leaving, car keys in hand, phone in his pocket. He stepped outside, closed the door behind him, and walked to his car. Max did not follow. The door did not remain open. There was no moment where the dog could have slipped past unnoticed. Iris replayed the clip again. Then once more, each time confirming the same thing. Max had not left through the front door. She set the remote down carefully. Then she walked to the small desk in the corner of the living room and opened a drawer. Inside was a notebook, plain unmarked. She took it out, sat down, and opened to the first empty page. Her handwriting was neat, precise. 5:12 p.m., Max missing upon return. Doors locked, gates secured. Jordan claims he left at 2 p.m. States Max was present at that time. She paused for a moment, then added another line. No evidence of exit. The pen hovered above the page for a second longer before she closed the notebook. This was not the time for conclusions, only for records. The next call she made was not to Jordan. It was to the local animal control office. She asked the necessary questions, provided Max's description, confirmed that no recent reports matched. Her voice remained calm throughout. After that, she called 2 nearby shelters, then a veterinary clinic, then a neighbor who occasionally walked her dog past their house. No one had seen Max. No one had picked him up. No one had any information. By the time she set her phone down, the sky outside had shifted from gray to deepening blue. The house was still quiet. Iris stood in the center of the living room, her gaze resting briefly on the empty space where Max would have been. Then she turned and walked toward the garage. Inside, Jordan's car was gone, but hers remained. She opened the driver's side door, then paused. Something caught her attention. A faint scent, not strong enough to be obvious, but distinct. She leaned slightly closer, inhaling again. It wasn't hers. A floral note light, but unfamiliar. Iris straightened, slowly. Then she opened the back door of the car. The seat was clean. No fur. That more than anything made her still. Max shed constantly. It was impossible for him to be in a car and leave no trace behind, unless he hadn't been in her car, which meant she closed the door, locked it, and stepped back into the house. Jordan's explanation had been simple. Too simple. Max had gotten out. But there was no exit, no trace, no evidence. And now, something else. A scent that did not belong. Iris walked back to the living room, picked up her notebook again, and added another entry. Vehicle check, no fur in personal car. Foreign scent present. She paused. Then, after a moment of consideration, she wrote one more line. Possibility removal by second party. The word removal was deliberate. It implied intention, not accident. Iris closed the notebook once more. Her face remained composed, her breathing steady. But something had shifted, not outwardly, not in a way anyone else would immediately see, but internally, with a quiet certainty. Max hadn't wandered off. And Jordan had not told the truth. She moved to the couch and sat down, her hands resting loosely in her lap. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt occupied, filled with something waiting to be understood. Iris did not rush to fill that space. She allowed it to remain, because she knew something Jordan did not. The truth, when mishandled, leaves marks. Small ones at first, almost invisible, but they accumulate, and once they begin to align, they no longer look like accidents. They look like a path. Iris leaned back slightly, her gaze steady, unfocused, as if already looking past the present moment. Jordan had given her a story, but he had given it too quickly, too cleanly, and now, piece by piece, it was beginning to unravel. By the next morning, Iris had already separated what she felt from what she could prove. The feeling was simple. Max had been taken. The proof required more patience. She woke at the same time as always, moved through her routine without deviation, and left the house at exactly 7:40 a.m. To anyone watching, nothing had changed. Her posture was the same, her pace was the same. Her expression gave nothing away. Only the empty space by the door remained unfilled. At work, she completed her tasks with the same precision that had defined her for years. Reports were reviewed. Figures were verified. Emails were answered with clarity and restraint. No one commented on her behavior because there was nothing visible to comment on. But between tasks, she began the process. She started with time. Jordan had said he left the house at 2 in the afternoon. That was the first fixed point. Everything else would be measured against it. During her lunch break, Iris logged into the shared banking account from her work computer. The interface was familiar, structured, and efficient. She navigated to the transaction history and filtered the activity from the previous 48 hours. At first glance, nothing stood out. Groceries, a subscription payment, a routine utility charge. Then she adjusted the filter. Cash withdrawals. There it was. A withdrawal of $800 at 2:17 p.m. from an ATM located less than a mile from their house. Iris did not react immediately. She checked the timestamp again. 2:17 p.m. 17 minutes after Jordan claimed he had already left. She opened a second window and mapped the ATM location. It was on the route Jordan would take if he were heading toward the main highway, but it was also close enough to be reached quickly from their neighborhood. Possible, but not aligned. She wrote it down. 2:17 p.m. $800 cash withdrawal. Location Pine Street ATM. Then she leaned back slightly in her chair. Cash, untraceable once removed. Convenient, but only if used quickly. Iris returned to the transaction history and scrolled further. There were no deposits, no transfers that would explain the withdrawal, which meant the money had been handed directly to someone. She closed the banking window and opened her calendar. Jordan's work schedule was not something she typically monitored, but she had access to general company hours and expectations. His role did not require off-site visits. His presence was expected at the office during standard hours. If he had left at 2, he would have arrived at work after that. Late, but possible. Unless Iris paused. Then, she opened her email and searched for a specific message from the previous week. A company-wide notice Jordan had forwarded to her, casually mentioning an internal audit that required all staff to be present during business hours. She found it. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. The time window covered the entire afternoon. Iris read the email twice. Then she closed it. Jordan had not gone to work after leaving the house, which meant the question was no longer where he said he went, but where he actually went. That evening, Iris did not bring up the transaction. She did not mention the email. She did not ask any new questions. Instead, she prepared dinner as usual, set the table, and waited. Jordan arrived just after 6. He entered the house with the same routine gestures, keys on the counter, shoes by the door, a brief glance around the room. His eyes paused just for a moment on the empty space where Max's bed had been. Then he looked away. Any news, he asked, his tone neutral. No, Iris replied. He nodded once as if that confirmed something for him. Dogs wander, he said. It happens. Iris served the food without responding. They sat across from each other, the quiet between them no longer comfortable but not yet confrontational. Jordan ate quickly, his attention drifting to his phone between bites. He typed occasionally, his expression unreadable. Iris noticed the angle of the screen, the way he tilted it slightly away from her view. Another detail. After dinner, Jordan stood and moved toward the sink. "I'll take care of this," he said. Iris nodded. She walked into the living room and sat down, her posture relaxed, her gaze directed toward nothing in particular. From the kitchen, she could hear the sound of running water, the clink of dishes. Ordinary sounds. Unremarkable. She waited. Then, after a few minutes, Jordan's phone buzzed. Once. Then again. He did not respond immediately. The water continued to run. The phone buzzed a third time. This time, the sound shifted slightly, indicating a message rather than a notification. Jordan turned off the faucet. There was a brief silence, then the soft sound of footsteps as he moved back toward the counter. Iris did not turn her head. She remained still, her breathing even. From her position, she could not see the screen. But she could see the reflection, a faint glow on the stainless steel surface of the refrigerator. Enough to register movement. A name, partial. Not clear enough to read fully, but consistent. The same length, the same pattern, the same one she had seen earlier in the transaction records. Samantha, Jordan typed quickly, paused, then typed again. The rhythm of someone explaining something, or covering something. He set the phone down. A few seconds later, it buzzed again. He picked it up immediately this time. Iris closed her eyes briefly, not in frustration, not in resignation, in confirmation. The pieces were no longer isolated. They were beginning to connect. Later that night, after Jordan had gone to bed, Iris returned to the living room with her notebook. She sat at the desk, opened to a new page, and began to write. 2:00 p.m. Jordan claims departure. 2:17 p.m. ATM withdrawal, $800. Work email mandatory presence conflict. Evening repeated contact with Samantha. She paused, then added, behavior-controlled, preemptive explanation. Tone rehearsed. The pen moved steadily without hesitation. Then, at the bottom of the page, she wrote a single line that she did not underline, did not emphasize, but allowed to stand on its own. Max likely exchanged for cash. She closed the notebook. The conclusion was not emotional. It was structural, cause and effect, action and outcome. Jordan had taken something that was not his to trade, converted it into something he believed could not be traced, and in doing so had created a gap between what he said and what had actually occurred. Iris stood, turned off the light, and walked upstairs. The house was quiet again, but it no longer felt uncertain. It felt defined. Because now there was direction, not toward confrontation, not yet, but towards something more precise. The truth was no longer a question. It was a sequence. And Jordan, without realizing it, had already completed the first step. Jordan expected a reaction, not immediately perhaps, but eventually. He expected a question that lingered too long, a voice that tightened at the edges, a moment where Iris would lose the discipline she had always carried so carefully. He expected something that would confirm what he already believed, that silence meant confusion, and confusion meant control. What he did not expect was consistency. Iris did not ask about the withdrawal. She did not mention the email. She did not question the name that had appeared reflected faintly on the surface of the refrigerator. Instead, she continued. She woke at the same hour, left at the same time, returned in the early evening with the same quiet rhythm. The house remained orderly. Meals were prepared. Conversations, when they occurred, stayed brief and neutral. To Jordan, it began to feel like resolution, like the situation had settled itself without requiring further attention. That assumption gave Iris something more valuable than any immediate confrontation: time. She used it with precision. The shared accounts were her first focus. Not just the obvious transactions, but the patterns beneath them. She downloaded statements from the past 3 months and arranged them side by side, building a timeline that extended beyond the day Max disappeared. The earlier entries, when examined individually, had seemed routine. Together they revealed repetition, small transfers, inconsistent amounts, often rounded but not always, sometimes followed by cash withdrawals within hours. Iris marked each instance, carefully noting the date, time, and location. A structure began to emerge. Not chaotic, not accidental, deliberate. She cross-referenced those dates with Jordan's known schedule: workdays, weekends, days he had claimed to be occupied with meetings or errands. The alignment was not perfect, but it was close enough to suggest intent. Then, she moved to the credit card statements. There, the pattern became clearer. Restaurants that appeared only once, then never again. Boutique stores in neighborhoods Jordan had no reason to visit. A hotel charge modest but out of place, followed by a gas station purchase less than a mile away. Iris did not jump to conclusions. She documented. Each entry received a note, each note connected to a larger line. And within that line, one name appeared more consistently than the others. Not always directly, but indirectly. S. Reed. Sometimes in the memo field of a transfer. Sometimes as part of an email confirmation. Sometimes only as an initial attached to a delivery receipt. Samantha Reed. Iris wrote the name once in her notebook, then underlined it lightly, not as emphasis, as identification. That evening, she returned home and found Jordan already there. He was in the living room, sitting on the couch, his phone in his hand. The television was on, but the volume was low, and his attention was not on the screen. He looked up as she entered. "Hey," he said. Iris nodded. "You're home early?" "Yeah, nothing going on." There was a brief pause. "Any updates?" he asked, gesturing vaguely toward the empty space where Max's bed had been. "No," Iris said. Jordan leaned back slightly, exhaling. "I checked online earlier," he added. "Local listings, nothing." His tone carried just enough effort to sound involved. Iris watched him for a moment. "Thank you," she said. The words were simple. They gave him exactly what he needed. Confirmation that she believed he was trying. Jordan nodded, satisfied. He returned his attention to his phone. Iris moved past him into the kitchen, setting her bag down and beginning her routine. From her position, she could see him indirectly, his reflection in the microwave door, the subtle shifts in posture that accompanied each message he sent or received. The pattern was familiar now. Message, pause, response. Short bursts of attention repeated at irregular intervals. Not casual, not random. Engaged. She prepared dinner without comment. As the evening progressed, Jordan grew more relaxed. His movements lost their earlier caution. His phone remained in his hand more often than not, the angle no longer as carefully controlled. At one point he stood and walked into the hallway, speaking quietly. Iris did not follow. She did not need to. When he returned, his expression was neutral again, but the transition had been too quick. Another note filed without writing. Later, after dinner, Iris excused herself and went upstairs, not to rest, to retrieve something. From the closet in the spare bedroom, she took down a small storage box. Inside were older documents, utility records, previous leases, archived statements. Materials she had not needed recently, but had kept organized. She carried the box to the desk and began to sort through it. Her goal was not to find something new. It was to confirm consistency. Patterns, when real, extend backward. They leave traces in earlier behavior, earlier choices. She found what she needed in the second folder. A statement from nearly a year ago. A transaction flagged at the time as unusual, then dismissed. A small transfer to an unfamiliar account. At the time, Jordan had explained it as a reimbursement for a colleague. Iris had accepted that explanation. Now she compared the account number to the ones she had documented earlier. The last 4 digits matched. S. Reed. The connection was not recent. It had been building, quietly, over time. Iris placed the document aside and continued. Another statement. Another transfer. Different amount. Same pattern. Same account. She sat back slightly, allowing the information to settle. This was no longer a situation that had developed in the past few weeks. It was a system, maintained, repeated, refined. Jordan had not made a single mistake. He had made many, carefully, consistently. And because of that consistency, they were now visible. Downstairs, she could hear the faint sound of the television, the occasional movement as Jordan shifted position. He believed the situation was contained, that the absence of confrontation meant the absence of knowledge. Iris closed the folder and returned the documents to the box. Then she took her notebook and added a new section, historical pattern 12+ months. She listed the earlier transactions, marked the account, connected them to the recent entries. Then, beneath it all, she wrote Samantha Reed, ongoing financial link. The pen paused, then moved again. Max converted to cash latest event. She did not circle the words. She did not underline them. She simply left them there, clear, unambiguous. When she finished, she closed the notebook and turned off the light. As she stepped into the hallway, she paused briefly listening. Jordan's voice carried faintly from downstairs. Not a full conversation, just a few words. Soft, measured, intended not to be heard. Iris did not move closer. She did not need to hear the content. The existence of the call was enough. She walked back into the bedroom and prepared for sleep. When Jordan joined her later, he behaved as he always did, routine, unremarkable, unchanged. He did not mention the call. He did not mention the transactions. He did not mention Max. He believed the silence protected him. In a way it did. It protected him from immediate consequence, from confrontation, from the need to adjust his story too soon. But it did not protect him from accumulation. Because every day that passed without disruption allowed Iris to gather more. More records, more connections, more structure. And structure, once complete, does not require interpretation. It presents itself. Jordan had mistaken her silence for absence. What he had actually been given was space. And within that space, Iris was building something far more precise than anger. She was building a case. Iris did not rush the next step. By the time Samantha Reed became more than a name in her notebook, Iris already understood that timing mattered more than proximity. Finding someone was not difficult. Finding them at the right moment when they were most likely to reveal something true required patience. She began with what could be verified. The address linked to the account transfers had appeared twice in older statements masked through different service providers, but consistent in location. A residential complex in the eastern part of the city, not expensive but carefully maintained. The kind of place chosen for discretion rather than display. Iris drove past it for the first time on a Thursday evening. She did not park immediately. She circled once, then again, mapping the layout in her mind. Entry points, camera placements, visitor parking, the rhythm of people entering and leaving. Nothing about the building stood out, which in itself made it useful. On her third pass, she pulled into a spot across the street and turned off the engine. She did not take out her phone. She did not record. She simply watched. People came and went in predictable patterns. A couple returning with groceries. A man walking a dog that was not Max. A woman speaking briefly into her phone before entering the building. Iris waited. Time moved without urgency. Then at 6:42 p.m. a car pulled into the lot. Jordan's car. He parked near the side entrance, not the main one. He did not hesitate. He did not look around. He stepped out, checked his phone, and walked inside with the familiarity of someone who had done this before. Iris did not follow. She did not need to. The confirmation was enough. She remained where she was for another 15 minutes, allowing the moment to settle into something stable, something she could return to without distortion. Then she started the car and drove away. The next step was not confrontation. It was preparation. Over the following days, Iris adjusted her schedule slightly. Not enough to be noticed, just enough to create space. She returned to the building twice more, once in the morning, once in the early afternoon. Jordan's car was not present during those times, which meant his visits followed a pattern. Evenings, after work, consistent with the transactions, consistent with the messages. Iris noted each visit, each absence, each confirmation. Only when the pattern held steady did she consider contact. She chose a Saturday, mid-morning, a time when routines were looser, when people were less guarded, when the expectation of interruption was lower. She dressed simply. Neutral colors, nothing that would draw attention or suggest intention. She carried only what she needed: her phone, her notebook, and a small folder containing copies of selected records. Not all, just enough. The building's lobby was quiet when she entered. A receptionist sat behind a desk, scrolling through something on a screen. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, glancing up. "I'm here to see Samantha Reed," Iris said. The name was delivered without hesitation. The receptionist typed briefly, then nodded. "Unit 3B. You can go up. No questions, no suspicion." Iris thanked her and walked toward the elevator. Inside, she stood still, her reflection faint in the mirrored wall. Her expression remained unchanged. Calm, neutral, controlled. The door opened on the third floor. She stepped out, following the hallway to the right. 3B. The door was closed. Iris stood in front of it for a moment, not raising her hand immediately. She listened. No voices, no movement. Then she knocked. 3 times. Measured. A pause. Footsteps approached from inside. The door opened. Samantha Reed stood in the doorway. She was younger than Iris had expected. Late 20s, perhaps. Well-dressed, but not in a way that suggested excess. Her expression shifted quickly from neutral to cautious as she took in the unfamiliar face. "Yes?" Samantha asked. Iris met her gaze directly. "My name is Iris Whitmore," she said. "I believe we have something in common." The words were not aggressive, but they were precise. Samantha's expression tightened slightly. "I don't think." "Jordan Whitmore." Iris continued, her tone unchanged. The name settled between them. Samantha did not respond immediately. Her hand remained on the door. Her posture did not invite entry, but she did not close it. "That's not what you think," Samantha said, finally, her voice controlled but thinner than before. Iris nodded once. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here to clarify." A pause. Then, after a moment of hesitation, Samantha stepped back. 5 minutes, she said. Iris entered. The apartment was clean, organized, minimal. Not unlike her own. Another detail. They sat across from each other in the living area, a small table between them. Samantha remained upright, her posture defensive, her eyes fixed on Iris with a mixture of uncertainty and calculation. "You should leave," Samantha said. "This isn't appropriate." Iris placed the folder on the table but did not open it. "I'm aware," she said. "That's why I kept this brief." Samantha's gaze flicked to the folder, then back to Iris. "I'm not interested in whatever this is," she said. "I know," Iris replied. "But you are already part of it." The words were not an accusation. They were a statement. Samantha's jaw tightened. "Jordan told me everything," she said. Iris tilted her head slightly. "Then you know about the dog," she said. The shift was immediate, small, but visible. Samantha's eyes narrowed. "What dog?" Iris did not respond right away. She opened the folder slowly and removed a single sheet. An image. Max. standing in the backyard, captured from an earlier photo. She placed it on the table. "This is Max," she said. "He disappeared 4 days ago." Samantha looked at the photo, then back at Iris. "I don't understand what this has to do with me," she said. Iris slid the second document forward. A printed transaction, $800. Timestamp, location. Jordan withdrew this the same afternoon, Iris said. 17 minutes after he left our house. Samantha's gaze moved between the documents. Her posture shifted slightly, not relaxed, but no longer entirely certain. He sold the dog, Iris said. The words were quiet, flat, unembellished. Samantha stared at her. For a moment there was no response. Then she laughed. Short, unsteady. "That's ridiculous," she said. "Why would he?" "Because he needed cash," Iris replied. Another document. A transfer. Account ending in the same digits. Samantha's account. Samantha's hand moved slightly, almost unconsciously, as if to pull the paper closer, then stopped. "I didn't ask where the money came from," she said. Iris nodded. "I know." Silence followed. Not empty, not neutral, shifting. Samantha leaned back slightly, her expression no longer defensive but unsettled. "He told me you were difficult," she said. "That things were already over." Iris did not react to the description. "He told me that too," she said. The symmetry was not emphasized. It did not need to be. Samantha looked down at the table again, then back at Iris. "What do you want?" she asked. Iris closed the folder. "Nothing from you," she said. Not directly. She stood. Samantha remained seated, watching her. "But you should understand what you're involved in," Iris added. "Not just what you've been told." She moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing," she said without turning back. "If he sold something that mattered to me for cash, he will do the same with anything else, including you." The statement was not a threat. It was a projection, a pattern extended forward. Iris opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Behind her, the apartment remained silent. Samantha did not call after her. She did not argue. She did not close the door immediately. Because something had shifted. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Iris walked to the elevator and pressed the button. As she waited, her reflection appeared again in the metal surface of the door. Unchanged, composed. The meeting had not been about confrontation. It had been about placement, setting a piece in motion. Because now Samantha knew. And once someone knows, they do not behave the same way again. The system Jordan had built relied on separation, on controlled information, on silence in the right places. Iris had just disrupted that balance. Not loudly, not visibly, but precisely. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, and as they closed, the next phase had already begun. Samantha Reed did not close the door immediately after Iris left. She remained where she was, one hand still resting against the edge of the table, the other loosely holding the printed transaction Iris had placed in front of her. The apartment felt smaller now, as if the walls had shifted inward by a few inches, tightening around the quiet. For the first time since she had met Jordan, the story he had given her no longer fit. It had been simple, clean, convenient. He had told her that his marriage was already over in everything but paperwork, that Iris was distant, difficult, uninterested in fixing what had long since broken, that he stayed out of obligation, not attachment, that leaving would only be a matter of time. Samantha had accepted that version because it required no effort to believe. It allowed her to occupy a space without questioning how it had been made available. Now there was something else. A missing dog, cash, a timeline that did name not align. She placed the paper down slowly. Then she reached for her phone. Jordan's name was still at the top of her recent messages. She stared at it for a moment. Then she pressed call. He answered quickly. "Hey," he said, his tone light familiar. "Everything okay?" Samantha did not respond immediately. Instead, she asked a question. "What did you do this week?" There was a pause. "Work," Jordan said. "Same as usual." "Why anything else?" "No. Why are you asking?" Samantha leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on the table. "A woman came to see me," she said. Another pause. Longer this time. "Who?" Jordan asked. She said her name was Iris Whitmore. The silence that followed was no longer neutral. It was shaped, controlled. What did she want? Jordan asked, finally, his voice steady but lower now. "To clarify," Samantha said. Jordan exhaled softly, almost inaudibly. "She's been unstable lately," he said. "I told you things were complicated." Samantha did not interrupt. "She's probably trying to cause problems," he continued. "It's nothing you need to worry about." Samantha picked up the photo of Max again, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper. "She said you sold her dog," she said. There was no immediate response. Just the faint sound of breathing on the other end of the line. "That's not what happened," Jordan said. "What did happen?" "I gave it away," he said. "It wasn't safe there anymore. She couldn't take care of it properly." The explanation came quickly. Too quickly. Samantha closed her eyes briefly. "For cash?" she asked. "No," Jordan said. "Of course not." She opened her eyes again. The transaction lay in front of her. The numbers did not change. "You withdrew $800 the same afternoon," she said. Another silence. This one longer. He was thinking now. Adjusting. "Coincidence," he said. Samantha let out a small breath. Not quite a laugh, not quite disbelief. "You told me you didn't have cash problems," she said. "I don't," he replied. "Then why did you need cash?" "I didn't need it," he said. He stopped. The sentence did not complete itself. Samantha leaned forward slightly. "Jordan," she said, her voice quieter now, but more focused. "What aren't you telling me?" There was a shift on the other end of the line, a subtle change in posture that could be heard, not seen. "You're overthinking this," he said. "She's trying to manipulate you." Samantha looked around the apartment, at the furniture he had helped choose, at the small details that had once felt like shared decisions. Now they felt like evidence. "She showed me records," she said. "Anyone can print something out," Jordan replied. "She knew about the transfers," Samantha continued. Another pause, this one sharper. "What transfers?" he asked. The question came too quickly, too defensively. Samantha did not answer. Instead, she asked something else. "How long have you been sending money to this account?" she said. There was no response, only silence, the kind that fills space rather than leaves it empty. Samantha waited. Then slowly, she ended the call. She did not block him. She did not send another message. She simply placed the phone down and sat back. For several minutes, she did nothing. Then, she walked to the window and looked out at the street below. People moved as they always did, unaware, uninvolved. The world had not changed. Only her position within it had. Across the city, Iris Whitmore was not waiting. She had not expected immediate results from the meeting. Change, when real, did not happen all at once. It unfolded, in fragments, in hesitations, in questions that could no longer be ignored. That evening, when Jordan returned home, he found Iris in the kitchen. She was preparing dinner. The same routine, the same posture. Nothing altered. "Hey," he said, setting his keys down. Iris nodded once. "You're home." He watched her for a moment longer than usual. Then he moved closer. "Did you go anywhere today?" he asked. The question was casual, but not entirely. Iris continued slicing vegetables, her movement steady. "Yes," she said. "Where?" She placed the knife down and turned slightly, meeting his gaze. "Out," she said. The answer was accurate and incomplete. Jordan held her gaze for a second, then looked away. "Did you find anything?" he asked. "Not yet," Iris replied. The conversation ended there. But something had shifted, not in what was said, in what was being measured. Later that night, Jordan's phone buzzed repeatedly. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Iris remained where she was, listening not to the words, but to the pattern. Short responses, longer pauses, a tone that had lost some of its earlier confidence. When he returned, he did not mention the call. He sat down, picked up his fork, and continued eating, as if nothing had happened. But his movements were slightly off, less certain. Iris noticed and recorded, not in her notebook, in memory. Because now there were 3 points in motion. Herself, Jordan, and Samantha, each responding to the same set of facts, but in different ways. Jordan was adjusting his story. Samantha was questioning hers, and Iris was doing neither. She was only aligning what already existed. The strength of that position was not in control. It was in consistency. Because once a system begins to fracture, it does not break all at once. It reveals itself, piece by piece, in contradictions, in omissions, in the space between what is said and what can be proven. Jordan had built his structure carefully, maintained it over time, refined it through repetition. But he had also relied on something fragile, that no one would compare the pieces. Iris had. And now, so had Samantha. The separation was gone. And without separation, the system could not hold. That night, as the house settled into silence, Iris sat alone in the living room. The notebook rested beside her, unopened. She did not need to write, not yet. Because the next developments would not come from her actions alone. They would come from pressure, from doubt, from the slow, inevitable unraveling of a story that had been told too many times in too many ways. She leaned back slightly, her gaze steady, her breathing even. The work she had done so far had been quiet, measured, invisible. But its effects were beginning to surface, not as confrontation, not as resolution, but as instability. And instability, once introduced, does not remain contained. It spreads until something gives. By the time the first visible cracks appeared, Iris had already moved beyond suspicion. She was no longer asking whether Jordan had lied. She was mapping how often, how consistently, and how deliberately he had done it. Patterns once identified required confirmation, and confirmation required structure. That was where the bank records became more than supporting detail. They became the center. On Monday morning, Iris did not go directly to her office. Instead, she stopped at a small branch location of their bank, one she had used occasionally in the past, but not frequently enough to be recognized. The building was quiet, with only 2 customers ahead of her in line. When it was her turn, she approached the counter and requested access to extended transaction records for their joint account. Going back how far, the teller asked. 12 months, Iris said. The teller nodded and began the process verifying her identity, confirming account permissions, and initiating the request. It took several minutes. Iris waited without checking her phone. When the documents were printed, they were handed to her in a neat stack. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" the teller asked. "No," Iris replied. "Thank you." She left the bank and returned to her car, placing the documents carefully on the passenger's seat. Only once she was parked outside her office did she begin reviewing them. The digital records she had accessed earlier were useful. But printed data had a different weight, a different clarity. It allowed for comparison without distraction. She spread the pages across the desk in her office, aligning them by date. Then she began. At first, the pattern remained subtle. Transfers of varying amounts, withdrawals spaced irregularly. But as she marked each instance, connecting dates, amounts, and account identifiers, the structure became undeniable. Every 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes more frequently, always following the same sequence. Transfer, withdrawal, silence, then repetition. Iris circled each occurrence, then drew lines between them. By the time she reached the most recent entries, the page no longer looked like a list. It looked like a system. At the center of that system was a single account, ending in the same 4 digits she had already identified. Samantha Reed. Iris leaned back in her chair. There was no uncertainty left. Jordan had not simply spent money carelessly. He had redirected it, consistently, over time, from a shared account, without disclosure. The legal implications were clear. But Iris did not act on them immediately. She continued, because the financial pattern alone was not enough. It needed context, intent, and connection to the most recent event, Max. She turned to the final set of records. The withdrawal, $800. 2:17 p.m., Pine Street ATM. She had already confirmed the time. Now she confirmed the location. Again. She opened a map and traced the route from their home to the ATM. Then from the ATM to the apartment complex where Samantha lived. The distance was minimal. A direct line. Less than 10 minutes. Iris did not need to speculate. The sequence was evident. Jordan had left the house, withdrawn cash, then continued to Samantha's building. The timing allowed for nothing else. She wrote it down. 2:00 p.m. departure. 2:17 p.m. withdrawal. Approx. 2:30 p.m. Arrival at Samantha's residence. Then she added, missing asset Max occurs within same window. The word asset was deliberate. It removed emotion, allowed the event to be placed within the same structure as the financial activity, because legally that was what mattered. Ownership, transfer, consent, none of which had been present. That afternoon, Iris scheduled a meeting. Not with Jordan, with Daniel Brooks. The law firm he worked at was located downtown, in a building that reflected the kind of professionalism that did not require display. Clean lines, neutral tones, controlled access. When Iris entered, she was greeted by a receptionist who asked her name and directed her to a waiting area. Daniel Brooks arrived within minutes. He was in his early 40s, composed, direct, and attentive without being intrusive. "Miss Whitmore," he said, extending a hand. "Iris," she replied. They sat across from each other in a private office. "Tell me what's going on," Daniel said. Iris did not begin with emotion. She began with structure. She placed the documents on the table, organizing them into sections. "Joint account," she said. 12 months. She explained the pattern, the transfers, the withdrawals, the account link. Then she moved to the most recent event. "The dog," she said. "He sold it." Daniel did not interrupt. He reviewed the documents as she spoke. His expression focused his attention, shifting between the records and her explanation. "Do you have proof of the sale?" he asked. "Not directly," Iris said. "But the timing aligns with the withdrawal. And the dog did not leave the house on its own." Daniel nodded slowly. "And the recipient of the funds?" he asked. "Samantha Reed," Iris replied. "She is aware of some of the activity, not all." Daniel leaned back slightly. "Has your husband acknowledged any of this?" he asked. "No," Iris said. "He denies everything." Daniel considered that for a moment. Then we proceed carefully, he said. He began outlining the options: financial misconduct within a marriage, unauthorized transfer of shared assets, potential fraud, the recovery of property, the importance of preserving evidence. Do not confront him yet, Daniel said. Not until we have everything documented. I won't, Iris replied. He studied her for a moment. You've handled this well so far, he said. Iris did not respond to the observation. She had not approached the situation as something to be handled, only as something to be understood. Next step, Daniel continued, we secure copies of everything. Bank records, communications, any recordings you may have. We also look into recovering the dog through proper channels. I've located the buyer, Iris said. He doesn't know the situation. That helps, Daniel said. We'll handle that legally. Iris nodded. There was no urgency in her movements. No sign of relief, only continuation. When the meeting ended, she left with a clear framework. Not for confrontation, for procedure. That evening, when she returned home, Jordan was already there. He looked up as she entered. Hey, he said. Iris nodded. Long day, he asked. Yes, she replied. There was a pause. Anything new, he asked. No, Iris said. The answer was accurate, because what had changed was not visible. Not yet. Jordan accepted it. He returned his attention to the television. The same pattern, the same assumption. That silence meant absence. Iris moved through the house, setting her things down, preparing dinner. Her movements remained unchanged, but now there was structure behind them. Not just observation, action. Documented, organized, legal. Because the story Jordan had created was no longer his to control. It had moved beyond conversation, beyond explanation, into something else. Something that did not rely on what he said, only on what could be shown. And what could be shown was no longer incomplete. It was forming, piece by piece, into something that would not require interpretation, only presentation. Iris did not go to Ethan Cole's house the day she found his name. She waited. Not because she was uncertain, because she understood that the order of actions would determine the outcome. Daniel Brooks had been clear. Recovery of property required documentation, not confrontation. If she approached the situation emotionally, she risked complicating something that could otherwise remain clean, provable, and reversible. So she prepared. Ethan Cole's information had come from a small, almost forgettable detail, a neighborhood forum post buried beneath routine listings mentioning a recently acquired golden retriever. The description had been simple, friendly, healthy, adjusting well. Iris had not responded to the post. She had traced it. The username led to a profile, the profile to a name, the name to a property record. Ethan Cole, single-family home, east side of the city. No history that suggested anything questionable. No indication that he knew the origin of what he had purchased. Which meant he was not the problem. Only part of the sequence. On Wednesday morning, Iris forwarded the information to Daniel. By noon, he had responded. We proceed formally. No direct contact yet. Iris read the message once, then closed her email. The next part required patience of a different kind. That evening, she drove past Ethan's address, not to approach, to confirm. The house matched the records, modest, well-maintained. A small yard enclosed by a low fence. Nothing about it suggested neglect or instability. She parked briefly at the end of the street, watched, waited. Then she saw him, Max. The movement was immediate, unmistakable. The way he stepped into the yard, the angle of his head, the steady, familiar pace. He was there, alive, unharmed. Iris did not move closer. She did not call out. She remained in the car, her hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, her breathing unchanged. The distance was deliberate, because closing it too soon would change the structure she had built. Max walked along the fence, pausing briefly as if sensing something beyond his immediate space. Then he turned, responding to a voice from inside the house. Ethan stepped out a moment later. He was younger than Iris expected. Early 30s, casual posture, no sign of tension or awareness of anything unusual. He called Max again. The dog responded. There was no fear, no distress, only familiarity. Iris watched for another minute. Then she started the car and drove away. That night, she wrote only one line in her notebook: Max located. Condition stable? She did not add more, because what mattered now was not where Max was, but how he would return. The following day, Daniel contacted her again. "We'll initiate recovery based on ownership," he said during a brief call. "You have veterinary records?" "Yes," Iris replied. "Registration, yes. Microchip registered under my name." "That's enough," Daniel said. "We'll proceed." The process was not immediate. It required documentation, verification, and communication through proper channels. Ethan would be contacted, not as an offender. As a participant in a transaction he did not fully understand. Iris did not attend that initial exchange. She did not need to, because this was not about reclaiming something emotionally. It was about restoring what had been taken improperly and ensuring that the record reflected that truth. While that process began to move forward, something else shifted. Not outwardly, not in a way that could be pointed to directly, but within the space between Jordan and Samantha. It started with silence. Samantha did not respond to Jordan's messages immediately. Where there had once been quick replies, there were now delays. Where there had been consistency, there were now gaps. Jordan noticed. He did not mention it at first, but his behavior changed, subtly. He checked his phone more often, paused mid-conversation, stepped away more frequently to take calls. At home, Iris observed without reacting. The pattern was familiar, but now it was reversed. Jordan was no longer controlling the flow of information. He was responding to it, adjusting, compensating. That Friday evening, he returned home later than usual. Not excessively late, but outside his recent pattern. Iris was in the living room when he entered. "You're late," she said. The statement was neutral, not accusatory. "Traffic," Jordan replied. He set his keys down, moved through the room, avoided her gaze for half a second longer than necessary. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," Iris said. There was a pause. Then Jordan spoke again. "Did anyone come by the house this week?" he asked. The question was casual, but not entirely. Iris looked at him. "Yes," she said. Jordan's expression remained controlled. "Who?" he asked. Iris held his gaze. "A woman," she said. The answer was precise and incomplete. Jordan nodded slowly. "Did she say what she wanted?" he asked. "To clarify," Iris replied. The same words Samantha had used. Jordan's posture shifted slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to be recorded. And he asked. "She left," Iris said. Another pause. Jordan exhaled softly. "People can be unpredictable," he said. Iris did not respond. The conversation ended there. But the balance had changed, because now Jordan knew. Not everything, but enough. Enough to understand that something had moved beyond his control. Later that night, his phone buzzed repeatedly. He stepped outside to take the call. Iris remained inside, listening, not to the words, but to the tone. Lower, tighter, less certain. When he returned, he did not speak. He moved through the house quietly, as if minimizing his presence would restore something that had already shifted. Iris watched him, not with judgment, not with anger, with clarity, because what was happening now was not new. It was the consequence of what had already been set in motion. The system Jordan had relied on required alignment between what he said, what he did, and what others believed. That alignment was gone. Samantha was questioning. Ethan would soon be informed. Daniel was documenting. And Iris was no longer observing. She was executing. Not visibly, not dramatically, but precisely, because recovery was not the end. It was one part of a larger structure, a structure that would not rely on confrontation, only on sequence. Jordan had sold something he believed could be replaced, converted it into cash, and continued as if nothing had changed. But some actions do not disappear once completed. They remain, in records, in timelines, in the quiet space between what is claimed and what can be proven. And now that space was closing. By the following week, Iris had moved from collection to calibration. The difference was subtle but essential. Collecting evidence required patience. Calibration required precision, knowing which moments mattered, which words would hold weight, and which silences would reveal more than any direct question. Jordan, without realizing it, had begun to supply what she needed. It started with his tone. He no longer spoke with the same easy confidence. His sentences were shorter. His explanations came with slight delays, as if each response needed to be checked before it was delivered. He asked more questions than he answered. He watched Iris more closely, trying to measure what she knew without asking directly. Iris noticed all of it, and she gave him nothing. That Monday evening, Jordan brought up the subject himself. "I've been thinking," he said, standing near the kitchen counter while Iris prepared dinner, "about Max." Iris did not look up immediately. She finished slicing the last piece of vegetable, set the knife aside, and rinsed her hands. "What about him?" she asked. Jordan shifted his weight slightly. "Maybe we should consider the possibility that he's not coming back," he said. The sentence was framed as concern, but it carried something else. Closure. Premature. Iris turned then, meeting his gaze. "Why would you think that?" she asked. Jordan hesitated. "Not long. But enough. Dogs get picked up," he said. "Taken in, rehomed. It happens." The explanation echoed his earlier one. But now it felt less certain, more constructed. Iris nodded once. "It does," she said. Nothing more. No resistance. No agreement. Just acknowledgement. Jordan watched her for a moment longer, then looked away. The conversation ended. But the words remained. Later that night, after Jordan had gone upstairs, Iris stayed in the living room. Her phone rested on the table beside her. A new addition. A small, unobtrusive recording app activated and ready. Not always necessary, but useful when timing aligned. At 9:14 p.m., Jordan's phone buzzed. He picked it up immediately, read the message, then stood and walked toward the hallway. Iris did not move. She waited. The door to the hallway closed. His voice dropped, but not enough, not completely. Fragments carried. "Told you. Not a good time? Just wait." Iris reached for her phone, activated the recording. Not because she needed everything. Only because partial context, when combined with existing records, often became enough. Jordan's voice continued, "No, she doesn't know." A pause. Then sharper, "Stop asking that." Silence followed. Then softer, "I'll handle it." Iris ended the recording, saved the file, labeled it with the date and time. No commentary, no interpretation, just placement. When Jordan returned, he did not mention the call. He sat down, picked up a glass of water, and drank it slowly. His movements were controlled, but not as controlled as before. The next morning, Iris adjusted her schedule. She left the house 10 minutes earlier than usual. drove past a different route, then stopped. A small electronics store. She entered, browsed briefly, and selected a device. Compact, unremarkable. Designed for one purpose: audio capture. She paid in cash, did not request a receipt, and left. Back at home, she placed the device in the living room. Not hidden, but not obvious. Positioned where casual conversation would be captured without effort. She did not activate it immediately. Timing mattered. That evening, Jordan returned earlier than expected. He entered the house, set his keys down, and looked around. "Hey," he called. Iris stepped out from the kitchen. "You're early," she said. "Left work early?" he replied. There was a pause. Then, "We should talk." Iris nodded. "About what?" Jordan hesitated, then stepped closer. "This situation," he said. "It's not working." The phrasing was vague, deliberately so. Iris remained still. "What situation?" she asked. Jordan exhaled. "You, me, the house, everything." He avoided specifics, stayed broad, safe. Iris reached for the counter lightly, her posture unchanged. "If you have something to say it," she said. The invitation was direct. Jordan hesitated again. "Then I think we need some space," he said. The words landed carefully, as if placed rather than spoken. Iris nodded once. "For how long, I don't know," he said. "Just until things settle." "What things?" she asked. Jordan's expression tightened. "You know what I mean," he said. Iris did not respond immediately. "Then no," she said. "I don't." The silence that followed was different. Not neutral, not comfortable. Jordan looked at her. Really looked this time. Trying to read something that was not there. "I've been under a lot of pressure," he said. The explanation shifted. External. Unverifiable. "I understand," Iris replied. Her tone remained even, which made the statement difficult to challenge. Jordan exhaled again. "Then maybe we should talk about dividing things," he said. There it was. Not explicit, but close. Iris's gaze did not change. Dividing what she asked. Jordan's jaw tightened slightly. The house, the accounts, everything. The structure he had avoided was now emerging. Piece by piece. Iris nodded slowly. "That can be arranged," she said. No resistance, no hesitation. Jordan blinked. He had expected something else. Argument, emotion, reaction. Instead, he received agreement. Measured, uncomplicated. "Good," he said. But the word did not carry confidence. Only relief. "Temporary." Iris stepped back slightly. "I'll review the accounts," she said. "We can discuss details later." Jordan nodded. "Yeah, that's fine." The conversation ended, but the device remained active. Every word, every pause, every shift in tone. Captured, stored. When Jordan left the room, Iris walked to the device, turned it off, saved the file, labeled it. Date, time, context, no interpretation. Because interpretation was not her role. Presentation would come later. That night, she reviewed what she had. Bank records, transaction patterns, audio fragments, behavioral inconsistencies. Each piece alone was incomplete. Together they formed continuity. And continuity was what mattered. Because once a timeline is established, deviation becomes visible. And Jordan had deviated. Repeatedly, consistently, in ways he could no longer reconcile. Iris closed her notebook, turned off the light, and sat in the quiet, not waiting, not reacting, only allowing the structure to complete itself. Because now it was no longer a question of whether the truth would surface. Only when. By midweek, the change in Jordan's behavior was no longer subtle. It was visible in the way he moved through the house, in the way his attention fractured across small moments that had once required none. He checked his phone more often. He paused mid-sentence as if recalibrating what he had just said. His gaze lingered longer on Iris, not with curiosity, but with calculation. He was no longer certain of what she knew, and that uncertainty had begun to replace confidence. Iris did not acknowledge the shift. She allowed it to exist without interference, because pressure, when applied correctly, did not need to be increased. It needed only to be maintained. That morning, an email arrived in Jordan's inbox. He read it at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, his posture still. Iris was standing at the counter preparing her usual breakfast. She did not look directly at him, but she did not need to. The silence changed, subtly. Then Jordan spoke. "Did you contact a lawyer?" The question was controlled, but not neutral. Iris turned slightly, meeting his gaze. "Yes," she said. No hesitation, no explanation. Jordan blinked once, then again. "What for?" he asked. The question came too quickly, as if the answer might arrive before he was ready to hear it. Iris set the knife down. "For clarity," she said. The same word, repeated, consistent. Oh, Jordan exhaled slowly. "You should have talked to me first," he said. The statement was framed as expectation, but it carried something else, concern. Iris did not respond immediately. "Then I am talking to you now," she said. The distinction was precise. Jordan looked at her, tried to hold the moment, then looked away. "What did you tell him?" he asked. "The truth," Iris replied. Another pause. Longer. "He's going to make this complicated," Jordan said. "It already is," Iris said. The conversation ended there, not because there was nothing left to say, but because Jordan no longer knew how to continue without exposing something he had not yet prepared to defend. Later that afternoon, the second shift occurred, not in the house, but outside it, at Jordan's office. The internal audit he had once referenced casually, dismissively, had moved into a more formal phase. Financial records were being reviewed, expense reports were being cross-checked. Account activity was under examination. Jordan had not expected that timing. He had not expected overlap. But overlap is what exposed patterns. The same patterns Iris had already mapped. Repeated transactions, inconsistent reporting, unexplained withdrawals, nothing large enough to draw immediate attention, but enough when combined to raise questions. Jordan received a second email, this one marked differently. Internal review request. He read it once, then again. His expression remained controlled, but his hands did not move. Across the office, no one noticed, because nothing outward had changed. Only the direction of attention. Back at home, Iris continued her routine. She did not check his email. She did not need to, because the structure was already in motion. And once a system begins to reflect itself across multiple environments, it does not require intervention. It reveals itself. That evening, Jordan returned home later than usual. Not because of traffic, not because of work, because he needed time. Time to think, time to adjust, time to find a version of events that could still hold. When he entered the house, Iris was in the living room. Reading, the same posture, the same stillness. Nothing had changed. "Hey," he said. Iris looked up. "You're late," she said. Jordan nodded. "Work," he replied. The word had lost its weight. Iris did not challenge it. She closed the book and set it aside. "Dinner's in the kitchen," she said. Jordan moved past her, set his bag down, walked into the kitchen. But he did not sit immediately. Instead, he stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then he spoke. "They're reviewing accounts," he said. Iris remained where she was. "What accounts?" she asked. Jordan turned slightly. "Company accounts," he said. "Internal audit." Iris nodded once. That's standard, she said. Jordan hesitated. Then, yeah, he said, but they're being thorough. The word lingered. Iris did not respond, because she understood what he was saying without needing him to say it directly. The overlap had begun. Personal, professional, financial, all aligned through the same behavior. Jordan sat down, picked up his fork, but did not eat. I didn't do anything wrong, he said. The statement was immediate, unprompted. Iris looked at him. I didn't say you did, she replied, which made the statement unnecessary. Jordan exhaled. Then, they're just looking at everything. Iris nodded. That's their job, she said. The simplicity of the response left no space for argument. Jordan looked at her, tried to read something, anything. But there was nothing to read, only consistency. Later that night, his phone buzzed again. Samantha. He hesitated before answering, then stepped outside. Iris remained inside. The pattern repeated. Voice lowered, pauses extended, tone uncertain. But this time, something was different. The conversation lasted longer, the pauses deeper, the responses shorter. When he returned, his expression had shifted. Not fully, but enough. What did you tell her, he asked. Iris looked up. Who she said? Jordan held her gaze. Samantha, he said. The name was no longer avoided. Iris nodded once. The truth, she said. Jordan's jaw tightened. What truth, he asked. Iris did not respond immediately. Then, the same one you've been avoiding, she said. The words were not raised, not emphasized, but they landed. Jordan looked at her. For a moment it seemed as if he might continue, might push, might demand. But he didn't, because for the first time he was no longer certain he could control the outcome. He turned away, walked into the bedroom, closed the door. Iris remained where she was, still composed, because what was happening now was no longer dependent on her actions alone. The system had expanded into his work, into his other relationship, into the records he could not alter. And once that expansion occurs, containment is no longer possible. Only outcome. Jordan had begun to feel it. Not as consequence, not yet, but as pressure. And pressure, when sustained, does not need to be forced. It builds, until something breaks. By the time the formal letter arrived, Jordan had already begun to anticipate it. Not the content, but the inevitability. He found it in the mailbox on a Thursday afternoon, placed between routine envelopes that carried no weight. The difference was immediate. The paper was heavier, the return address precise. Daniel Brooks. Jordan stood in the driveway for a moment longer than necessary, turning the envelope once in his hand before opening it. Inside, the language was controlled, measured, clear. Request for full financial disclosure. Notification of legal representation. Instruction to preserve all records digital, written, and recorded. A reference to unauthorized transactions within a shared account. A separate paragraph addressing the transfer of personal property without consent. The dog was not named, but the implication was unmistakable. Jordan read the letter twice, then a third time. Each pass removed another layer of assumption. This was no longer contained. Not within the house, not within conversation. It had moved into structure, procedure. He folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and walked inside. Iris was in the living room, the same position, the same stillness, as if nothing had shifted. Jordan stood in the doorway for a moment, then stepped forward. "You hired him," he said. Iris looked up. "Yes," she replied. Jordan held the envelope out slightly. "You're serious about this?" It was not a question. Iris nodded once, Yes, there was no escalation, no visible emotion, which made the situation harder to challenge. Jordan moved further into the room. "This is unnecessary," he said. "We can handle this ourselves." Iris watched him, not with resistance, with clarity. "We are," she said. The answer did not align with his expectation. Jordan exhaled. "They're asking for everything," he said. "Accounts records." "Yes," Iris said. "They don't need all that," he continued. "They do," she replied. The simplicity of her response left no room for negotiation. Jordan looked at her, tried again. "You're making this bigger than it is." Iris did not respond immediately. "Then it already is," she said. The repetition was intentional, consistent. Jordan's jaw tightened. For a moment it seemed as if he might argue further, but he didn't. Because the letter in his hand did not respond to tone. It responded to compliance, or the lack of it. That night, Jordan did not bring up the subject again, but he did not let it go. He moved through the house with a different awareness now, not just of Iris, of everything. The placement of objects, the presence of devices, the possibility of observation. He checked his phone more carefully, deleted messages, paused before speaking, adjusted. But adjustment does not erase pattern. It only delays exposure. The next phase did not come from him. It came from process. Daniel moved quickly. Requests were filed, documentation compiled, ownership established. Max's records, veterinary registration, microchip were verified and matched. The chain of custody was clear. The transfer had occurred without consent, which meant it could be reversed. Ethan Cole received the notice on Friday morning. He read it once, then called the number listed. Daniel answered, explained, calmly, directly. Ethan did not resist, because he had not known, because the structure presented to him was clear. He had purchased something, but not from someone with the right to sell it. That distinction mattered, legally and ethically. "I'll cooperate," Ethan said. "Thank you," Daniel replied. Arrangements were made, documentation signed, a date set. Iris did not attend the initial exchange. She did not need to, because this was not about reclaiming something through confrontation. It was about restoring ownership through process. Jordan, however, learned about it differently. Not through Iris, through Samantha. She called him late that evening. Her tone was no longer uncertain. It was direct. "They contacted him," she said. Jordan froze. "Who?" he asked. "The lawyer," she replied. "About the dog." Silence, not empty, waited. "They're taking it back," she said. Jordan's hand tightened around the phone. "That's not how it works," he said. "It is," Samantha replied. Another pause. Then, "What else don't I know?" she asked. Jordan did not answer, because the answer was no longer contained. It existed in documents, in timelines, in records that did not require his explanation. "I'm done asking," Samantha said. And then the line went quiet. Jordan lowered the phone slowly. The room around him felt different. Not physically, structurally, because the separation he had relied on was gone. Completely. Samantha knew. Ethan knew. The lawyer knew. And Iris had never needed to say anything directly. That was the part he had not understood. That silence, when paired with structure, does not protect. It reveals. That night, Jordan did not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his thoughts moving in loops that no longer resolved. Every version of the story he had told at home, at work with Samantha, no longer aligned. And misalignment creates exposure, because once one version is questioned, the others follow. In the morning, he found Iris in the kitchen. The same routine, the same calm. "You're getting the dog back," he said. Iris turned slightly. "Yes." Jordan nodded slowly. You didn't even tell me, he said. I didn't need to, she replied. The statement was not dismissive. It was accurate. Jordan looked at her. Really looked this time. As if trying to find something that had been there before. But what he found instead was absence. Not of emotion, of reaction. Because Iris was no longer responding to him. She was moving through a sequence, and he was no longer at the center of it. What happens now, he asked. The question was not about the dog. It was about everything. Iris paused for a moment. Then we follow the process, she said. Jordan exhaled. And if I don't, he asked. Iris met his gaze. Then the process continues without you. The answer was simple, final. Jordan looked away, because for the first time he understood something he had avoided. This was no longer negotiable, not through conversation, not through explanation, not through control. The structure was complete, and once a structure reaches that point, it does not wait. It proceeds. Jordan did not intend to escalate, but loss has a way of exposing instinct. And Jordan's instinct, when faced with something he could not control, was not to withdraw. It was to push. The pressure had already reached him from multiple directions. Work, Samantha, the letter, the dog, each one manageable on its own. Together they formed something else. A narrowing, a sense that options were closing, that explanations were no longer enough, that silence no longer protected him. So he did what he had always done when control began to slip. He tried to take it back. That evening, he waited until the house was quiet, until Iris had finished her routine, until the distractions of the day had settled into stillness. Then he spoke. We need to talk, he said. Iris was in the living room, seated in the same place she had occupied so often in recent weeks. A book rested in her hands, though her attention had already shifted. She closed it gently, about what she asked. Jordan remained standing. The distance between them was deliberate, about everything he said. This he gestured vaguely around the room, this situation. Iris nodded once. Go ahead. Jordan hesitated, only for a moment. Then you've taken this too far, he said. The accusation was controlled, but it carried weight. Iris did not respond immediately. Then in what way, she asked. Jordan exhaled. The lawyer, the records, contacting people. It's unnecessary. The phrasing echoed his earlier argument, but now it lacked conviction. Iris observed that. You sold something that wasn't yours to sell, she said. The statement was direct, not raised, not emphasized, but clear. Jordan's jaw tightened. I told you, he said, that's not what happened. Iris did not interrupt. She allowed the denial to exist. Then the records don't support that, she said. Jordan stepped closer, not aggressively, but with intention. You're building a case, he said. Iris met his gaze. Yes, the honesty was not strategic. It was structural. Jordan blinked. Once. Then again. You're trying to ruin me, he said. Iris shook her head slightly. No, she said. I'm documenting what already exists. The distinction mattered, because it removed intent, placed everything on action. Jordan looked away, then back. You could have handled this differently, he said. How, Iris asked. The question was simple, but it required an answer. Jordan did not have one. Not one that aligned with what had already been revealed. He shifted again, changed direction. You think you're better than this, he said. Better than me. Iris did not react to the implication. This isn't about comparison, she said. Then what is it about, he asked. Iris held his gaze. Accuracy. The word landed quietly, but it stayed. Jordan exhaled sharply. That's not how relationships work, he said. Iris tilted her head slightly. No, she said. It's how records work. The conversation had moved beyond emotion, beyond reconciliation, into something else. Jordan felt it and resisted. Stop, he said. The word was sharper now, more direct. Stop what Iris asked. All of this, he said. The lawyer, the documentation, he stopped. Because listing it out made it real, made it visible. Iris remained still. I won't, she said. The refusal was not dramatic. It did not need to be. Jordan's hands tightened at his sides. You don't understand what this could do, he said. Iris watched him. I do, she replied. The certainty in her voice did not rise. It did not need emphasis. It was already complete. Jordan stepped back slightly, then forward again, as if trying to find the right distance. You're making a mistake, he said. Iris shook her head once. No, she said. You already did. The silence that followed was heavier, not because of volume, because of alignment. Everything that had been implied now stood in place. Jordan looked at her, and for a moment the frustration surfaced. Not loud, not explosive, but visible. This isn't over, he said. The statement carried an edge. Iris did not respond immediately. Then I know, she said, not as a challenge, as acknowledgement, because she understood something he was only beginning to feel, that this was not a moment, it was a sequence. And the sequence was already in motion. Jordan turned away, walked toward the hallway, stopped, then spoke again without turning back. You're going to regret this. The words were softer now, less certain. Iris watched him. Why, she asked. The question followed him. He did not answer, because there was no answer that held. He continued down the hallway, closed the door behind him. The sound was not loud, but it marked something. A shift. From control to reaction, from certainty to pressure. Iris remained where she was, still, composed, because what had just happened was not escalation. It was confirmation. Every attempt Jordan made to redirect, to minimize, to intimidate each one, followed the same pattern. Avoid, deflect, reframe, and when those failed, pressure. But pressure, when recorded, does not function as intended. It becomes evidence. Iris reached for her phone, opened the recording, listened briefly. Not for content, for clarity. The audio was clean. Every word, every pause, every shift in tone, captured. She saved the file, labeled it, placed it within the sequence. Then she set the phone down, closed her eyes for a moment. Not in relief, not in exhaustion, in completion, because this phase was ending. The attempts at control, the adjustments, the denials, they had all followed the same arc, and now they had reached their limit. Jordan would not stop, but he no longer had the ability to change the outcome, because the outcome was no longer dependent on what he said, only on what had been shown, and what had been shown was already complete. Iris opened her eyes. The room was quiet again, unchanged, but the structure beneath it had shifted fully into place. What remained was not confrontation, not conflict, but presentation. And presentation does not require force, only sequence. Jordan had provided that, piece by piece, without realizing it. The room was designed to remove distraction. Neutral walls, a long table, chairs placed at measured distances, no raised voices, no unnecessary movement. The kind of space where attention narrowed naturally, where words carried weight because there was nothing else to carry them. Jordan had been in rooms like this before. At work, in meetings, in reviews, but never like this. Never with every version of his story placed in front of him at once. Iris arrived first. She chose a seat near the center of the table, not at the head, not at the edge. Her posture was upright, her hands resting lightly in front of her. No documents were visible. No phone in her hand. Nothing to suggest preparation, even though everything had already been prepared. Daniel Brooks sat beside her. Calm, organized. A folder placed neatly on the table closed. Across from them, an empty chair waited. Jordan entered a minute later. He paused briefly at the doorway, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the arrangement, the positioning, the absence of anything informal. Then he stepped inside, sat down, placed his hands on the table, looked at Iris. She met his gaze. There was no hostility in it, no visible anger, only clarity. Daniel opened the folder, not all at once, piece by piece. "Thank you for coming," he said. Jordan nodded once. "Let's get this over with," he replied. The words carried an edge, but not enough to shift the room. Daniel did not respond to the tone. He began with structure. "We'll proceed through the timeline," he said. "If you have any clarifications, you can provide them." Jordan leaned back slightly, arms crossed, a position of resistance, but not of control. Daniel placed the first document on the table. Bank records, 12 months, highlighted entries, consistent patterns. He did not explain them immediately. He allowed them to exist, to be seen. Then he spoke. "These transactions originate from a joint account," he said, "transferred without disclosure, repeated over time." Jordan did not respond. His eyes moved across the page, then away. Daniel placed the second document. A continuation. More entries. Same pattern, same account. This account, Daniel continued, is linked to Samantha Reed. The name settled into the room. Jordan's posture shifted, slightly, but enough. "I've already explained that," he said. Daniel nodded. "You're welcome to clarify further," he replied. Jordan did not, because explanation required consistency, and consistency was no longer available. The third document followed. Timeline, dates, times, locations. On the afternoon of April 14th, Daniel said you departed your residence at approximately 2:00 p.m. Jordan remained still. 17 minutes later, an $800 cash withdrawal was made at the Pine Street ATM. The number did not change. It remained fixed, unmovable. Daniel placed the next page. A map, simple, direct, route marked, distance measured. Shortly after you arrived at a secondary location, Daniel continued. He did not name it immediately. He did not need to. Jordan's eyes had already shifted. The alignment was visible. Departure, withdrawal, arrival, sequence unbroken. Daniel paused, then placed the final document. Ownership records, veterinary, registration, microchip, all under one name, Iris Whitmore. The dog, Daniel said, was transferred without consent. Silence followed. Not empty, complete. Jordan leaned forward slightly. "This doesn't prove anything," he said. The statement came quickly, but it lacked structure. Daniel did not respond immediately. He reached into the folder, removed a device, placed it on the table. Audio. He pressed play. Jordan's voice filled the room. "No, she doesn't know." A pause. "Stop asking that." Another pause. "I'll handle it." The recording ended. The silence that followed was different. No longer neutral. Jordan's expression remained controlled, but the edges had shifted. "That's out of context," he said. Daniel nodded once. "Then provide context," he replied. Jordan opened his mouth, closed it, because context required alignment, and alignment no longer existed. Daniel placed one final sheet on the table. A summary, concise, structured, financial discrepancies, unauthorized transfers, property transfer without consent, documented communication, timeline correlation. No interpretation, only presentation. Jordan looked at it, then at Iris. For the first time, there was no calculation in his gaze, only recognition, not of defeat, of exposure. Iris did not speak. She did not need to, because everything that could be said had already been placed in front of him. Daniel closed the folder. "That concludes the review," he said. Jordan leaned back, slowly. His hands moved from the table to his lap. His posture shifted from resistance to stillness. The transition was subtle, but complete. "What happens now?" he asked. The question was not directed at Daniel. It was directed at the structure. Iris answered. "We proceed," she said. The words were quiet, but final. Jordan nodded once, as if acknowledging something he had already understood. Not in that moment, but gradually, piece by piece. As each element had been placed, there was no argument left to make, no version of events that could replace what had been shown, only outcome. He stood, not abruptly, not dramatically, just stood. "I'll be in touch," he said. The statement was formal, detached. He did not look at Samantha. She was not there. He did not mention work. He did not mention anything outside the room, because everything that mattered had already been addressed. He turned, walked to the door, paused briefly, then left. The room remained unchanged. Iris stayed seated for a moment longer, her hands still resting lightly in front of her. Her posture unchanged. Daniel gathered the documents, organized them, closed the folder. "That went as expected," he said. Iris nodded, not in agreement, in completion, because this was not a victory, not a moment to be marked. It was a step, one that had been building from the beginning, from the first inconsistency, the first record, the first silence. Now it had been presented, fully, without distortion, without interruption, and without the need for anything else. Iris stood, collected her things, and walked out of the room, not looking back, because there was nothing left in it for her. The house felt different when Iris returned, not because anything had changed physically. The furniture remained in place. The same soft light filtered through the windows. The same quiet settled into the corners of each room. But the weight was gone. Not entirely, not in a way that erased what had happened, but enough to make the silence feel like space again rather than pressure. Iris set her keys down in their usual place, removed her coat, placed her bag on the chair by the door, routine, unchanged. And yet everything within it had shifted. There were no messages waiting, no calls, no interruptions. The sequence had moved forward, and with it the need for constant observation had eased. She walked into the living room and paused for a moment, her gaze resting on the empty space where Max's bed had once been. That space would not remain empty for long. The recovery had been finalized that morning, documentation signed, ownership restored. Ethan Cole had complied without resistance. There had been no confrontation, no raised voices, only a quiet exchange of paperwork and acknowledgement. He had apologized, not defensively, not out of obligation, but with the understanding that he had been part of something he had not fully seen. Iris had accepted the apology with the same calm she had carried through everything else. Because blame had never been the point. Clarity had. That afternoon she drove to Ethan's house. This time she did not remain at a distance. She parked in the driveway, stepped out of the car, and walked to the gate. Ethan was already outside waiting. Max stood beside him. The moment was not dramatic. There was no sudden movement, no rush. Max looked at her, paused, then moved forward. Not quickly, but with certainty. Recognition did not need to be loud. Iris knelt slightly as he approached her hand, extending without hesitation. When he reached her, he leaned into her touch, the familiar weight returning in a way that did not need explanation. She ran her hand along his back slowly, her expression unchanged. But something in her posture softened. Only slightly, only for a moment. "Thank you," Ethan said. Iris looked up. "For cooperating," he added. She nodded once. "I appreciate it," she said. There was nothing more to discuss. No need to revisit the details. The exchange had already been completed. Ethan stepped back, opened the gate fully. Max moved through it without hesitation. Iris stood, attached the leash, not because she needed to, but because it marked the transition from absence to return. The drive home was quiet. Max settled into the passenger seat, his presence filling the space that had been empty for days. Iris did not speak. She did not need to. The silence was no longer uncertain. It was complete. Back at the house, she opened the front door and stepped inside. Max followed, paused, looked around, then moved toward the living room, settling into the space that had always been his. As if nothing had changed, as if everything had. Iris placed the leash back on its hook, set a bowl of water down, watched as Max drank, then lay down. The rhythm returned, naturally, without effort. Later that evening, Jordan arrived. He entered the house with the same motion as always, keys on the counter, a brief glance around the room. But this time, something interrupted that pattern. Max. He stopped, for a fraction of a second, then continued walking. "You got him back," he said. The statement was flat, not a question. Iris stood near the doorway to the living room. "Yes," she replied. Jordan nodded. Once. "Good," he said. The word carried no emphasis, no warmth, only acknowledgement. He moved past her, into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, closed it again. His movements lacked direction. Iris watched him, not with expectation, not with interest, with completion. "What happens now?" he asked. The question had returned, but it no longer carried uncertainty. It carried inevitability. Iris considered it for a moment, then answered, "We finalize everything she said." Jordan leaned against the counter, looked down, then back up. "And us?" he asked. Iris met his gaze. "There is no use in this process," she said. The words were not harsh, not dismissive. They were accurate. Jordan nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had already understood, not from her words, from everything that had led to them. He did not argue. He did not attempt to redirect, because there was nothing left to redirect. The structure had already been completed. "I'll get my things," he said. Iris stepped aside slightly, giving him space, not as permission. As acknowledgement, Jordan moved through the house quietly, collected what he needed, left what he did not. There was no urgency, no confrontation, only movement. When he reached the door, he paused, not turning back, not speaking. Then he left. The door closed behind him. The sound was soft, final. Iris remained where she was, for a moment. Then she walked back into the living room. Max was resting, calm, present. She sat down beside him, her hand resting lightly against his side. The house settled, not into silence, into stillness. There was no sense of victory, no release, only absence, of tension, of uncertainty, of something that had once occupied space without being visible. Iris leaned back slightly, her gaze steady, her breathing even, because what remained was not what had been taken, but what had been restored. Not just the dog, but the structure, the clarity, the alignment between what existed and what could be shown. And that alignment did not require celebration. only recognition. The sequence had ended, not with confrontation, not with noise, but with resolution, quiet, complete, and irreversible. The things that break a life rarely arrive all at once. They come in small decisions, quiet omissions, moments that seem insignificant until they begin to connect. And by the time they form a pattern, the damage is no longer about a single act, but about everything that act reveals. Iris did not raise her voice. She did not chase explanations or demand apologies. She allowed the truth to take its own shape through records, through time, through the simple act of not looking away. There is a kind of strength that does not need to be seen to be effective. It does not interrupt. It does not argue. It observes, it remembers, and when the moment comes, it presents. What happened in that house was not a story about revenge. It was a story about alignment between actions and consequences, between silence and evidence, between what is done and what cannot be undone. If you've stayed with this story, you already understand something important. That dignity is not something you reclaim in a single moment. It is something you protect quietly until the truth has nowhere left to hide. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to share where you're watching from and what time it is there. Sometimes knowing who is listening matters more than how many. And if you believe in stories where justice is quiet but undeniable, you can stay for the next one. There are more stories like this waiting to be told.